Stuart from Utradia here. Today we are going to be looking at a fairly recent SEC filing for CEI, Camber Energy. Essentially, it's around a lawsuit settlement and potential issuance of 500 million shares. If you've seen some of my previous videos, we've been following CEI for feels like the last 2 years. Some ups and downs. It's been quite an interesting ride, but like to dive into the SEC filings, figure out what's going on because it paints a pretty good picture. So we'll just do a quick run through of this post that one of our super users put together, and then we'll jump over to the social sentiment dashboard, see what's going on with CEI over the last little while, see if we can garner some additional insights. So before we go any further, if you can please like and subscribe, that'd mean a ton to me. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. Happy to answer them, whether you agree, disagree, always open to a solid discussion, because ultimately we want to become better investors. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so CEI Stock 8K filing. So if you're unfamiliar with an 8K filing, essentially it's a anytime there's a material definitive agreement or action, they have to file an 8K filing, which lets investors know that something significant to their business is happening. So essentially, without getting too deep into it, you can check out the original 8K filing here, and I'll link this all in the description below. But let's jump into what actually is happening. So lawsuit settlement and potential dilution. So it says this was on April 18th, so a little over a week ago. Camber Energy entered into a settlement agreement with Discover Growth Fund and Antilles Family Office, which the company, which is Camber, agreed to settle claims asserted by the investors in the verified complaint. Okay, they filed a complaint. Yada, 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 alleged that the company breached its stock purchase agreement with investors, pursuant to which the investors had purchased shares of Series C redeemable convertible preferred stock, as well as Series G redeemable convertible preferred stock. So both Series C and Series G. And they did so by failing to timely file all reports required to be filed by the SEC. So essentially, let's see, the claim, these investors were saying because you have failed to timely file all reports, we're essentially being negatively affected, and we want to be compensated for that. We all know, we've been following CEI for a while. Doris, the CEO, has said the 10K filing, they're working through it, should come out soon. They've missed a few deadlines, but I believe they have till, I want to say it's May 22nd, I'll double check, but to file the 10K filing with the SEC. And this is what George essentially gets into. Okay, so the other part of the filing talks about, the exchange of preferred stock for shares of company common stock provided by the settlement agreement is fair. Requiring 500 million shares of company common stock to be reserved for issuance on conversion of all shares preferred stock currently held by the investors, or which the investors are entitled to acquire under the purchase agreement. So essentially this is saying that Camber has to reserve 500 million shares of common stock for issuance on conversion of shares of the preferred stock. So if we go back up here, these investors have Series C preferred stock, Series G redeemable preferred stock. So we'd have to look in and see what the conversion is for Series C and Series G. You know, typically a convertible preferred stock, once it converts over, one Series C share equates, let's say, 10,000 or 20,000 common shares. So essentially what I'm getting from this is, down the road when the conversion occurs, we could see a potential increase of 500 million shares of common stock be issued, which would be significant from obviously a dilution standpoint. There are currently only 360 million shares outstanding currently. CEI is called out as a risk. So a potential of 138% dilution. Okay, so obviously the big thing to point out is we don't know what this conversion is from the Series C and Series G. All they're saying is Camber needs to hold at least 500 million shares of common stock to be used for issuance upon conversion. So maybe when it converts, only, I don't know, 100 million or 50 million shares are actually issued, common shares. Obviously, if that's the case, far less dilution. But as I should say, if you are an existing CEI investor, this is something to at least be aware of, because these investors have preferred shares, which ultimately gives them, preferred rights and preferred investment opportunity with less risk, opposed to most people who just own common stock of Camber Energy. So yeah, my thoughts on this are, understand the risk around what happens if the conversion occurs, these shares are issued, and then there's a dilution. Again, this is worst case scenario if all of these shares are issued at the same time. But until we know what that conversion is, it's tough to know what the actual dilution might be. Yeah, that's kind of the main thing I wanted to cover. Hopefully you found it useful, not meant to scare anyone, just to be aware of, because the more you understand kind of the inner workings and what's going on from a share structure perspective, the better off you are as an investor. So as I said, let's just quickly jump over to the social sentiment, see what's going on with CEI. Let's look at the price. I know the markets have been a little iffy the last little while. Let's look at the 3-month. Okay. So this is going back a while, last 3 months. Obviously, we saw jump in impressions here. This was Feb 21. Price was down short of 50 cents a share, jumped up to 75 cents a share, came back down a little bit. Jump in impressions, we jumped from 60 cents a share all the way up to $1.28 a share. If you remember, this is when kind of oil prices were spiking. So CEI had a pretty good run at that standpoint. Since then has dropped off, but have kind of been trading, just a little bit above the dollar, but seeing a little bit of support. Okay, another low point around 70 cents a share. But as you can see, a bit of correlation with the number of impressions. So as it trends on social media, we see that there's kind of a bit of a correlation with price action as well. This is just looking at the top accounts. So people have obviously big followings on Twitter. CEI. Okay, put call ratio. I'll link this below so you guys can check it out for yourself. But the real-time feed gives you good insights into what current CEI holders, investors are talking about, as well as any kind of major news that might drop. So highly recommend using this if you're a CEI investor to stay on top of things. Easier than trying to see all the tweets that come out on Twitter with the hashtag CEI. This feed just gives you everything in one place, so super useful from that perspective. Awesome. Hopefully you guys found this useful. Like I said, please like and subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, if I missed anything, incorrectly stated anything, please let me know. I'm happy to update it, and happy investing.